Hello, everybody. This is episode 7 of Lovecraft AI, and we're back to regular Lovecraft stories. And I think this one turned out pretty good, so we'll discuss it afterwards. Okay, this is The Grey Altar.
It was in the spring of 1927, during my brief sojourn in the antiquarian town of Kingsport, that I encountered the enigma of the Grey Altar. The townsfolk, reticent and wary, spoke of it only in whispers, if at all, and their aversion to the topic struck me as peculiar. I, being a man of no small intellectual curiosity, was drawn to the mystery with an enthusiasm that even the chill of their superstition could not dampen. The first hints of its existence came in the form of a yellow journal, unearthed from the attic of the cottage I had rented. The journal's author, one Amos Elbridge, a merchant mariner turned recluse, had filled its pages with disjointed accounts of strange lights in the hills and the muffled, sonorous chants that echoed faintly through the night. These entries culminated in a frantic scrawl, a single phrase repeated again and again: "The altar is awake." Intrigued, I resolved to investigate. My inquiries led me to an old map of the region, where a curious marking, an unlabeled symbol like a three-pointed star, was etched near the craggy cliffs northwest of town. When I pressed the local librarian for information, her face blanched, and she muttered something about ancient places before refusing to speak further. Thus, I ventured alone one moonlit evening, armed with only a lantern and a stout walking stick, following the faint trail that wound its way into the wilderness. The air grew colder as I ascended, and the trees, gaunt, gnarled things that clawed at the sky, seemed to press in closer with each step. By the time I reached the plateau marked on the map, I felt as though I had crossed some invisible threshold into a realm apart from the waking world. The gray altar stood at the heart of the clearing, a monolithic slab of stone unlike any I had ever seen. Its surface, though weathered, was inscribed with runes of an alien design, their angular patterns pulsating faintly under the pale light of the waxing moon. Around it lay scattered fragments of stone and bone, arranged in spiraling patterns that defied reason. The sight struck me with a primal unease, as if the thing radiated a malevolent awareness. I approached cautiously, my breath catching as the temperature seemed to plummet further. My lantern cast flickering shadows, and for a moment I thought I saw movement among the runes, an unnatural ripple as though the stone were alive and breathing. Laughing at my imagination, I bent to examine the markings more closely. It was then that I heard it, a low, resonant hum, so deep and pervasive that it seemed to vibrate within my very bones. The sound grew steadily, resolving into a cadence that was almost speech, though no human throat could have produced such guttural tones. I staggered back, my lantern falling from my grasp and extinguishing itself in the damp earth. The hum intensified, joined now by a faint glow emanating from the runes. A strange mist began to coalesce, rising from the ground like tendrils of living smoke. My rational mind rebelled against what my senses insisted was real. Within the mist, shapes were forming, shapes that bore no resemblance to anything terrestrial. I glimpsed writhing, amorphous forms, studded with eyes that blinked out of sync, and appendages that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. And then it spoke, not in words, but in a torrent of raw thought that flooded my mind, overwhelming all barriers of language and sanity. It was a voice of unimaginable age and incomprehensible vastness, filled with an indifference that chilled me more than any malice could. It spoke of worlds beyond worlds, of dimensions layered like tissue paper, and of entities older than time itself, slumbering beneath the fabric of reality. I tried to flee, but my limbs were leaden, as if the altar had bound me to the spot. The runes now blazed with a sickly, otherworldly light, and I felt my very essence being drawn toward them, pulled into a void I could neither see nor comprehend. My mind screamed against the knowledge that was forced upon it, the realization that humanity was but a flicker, an inconsequential speck adrift in an infinite ocean of horrors. When I awoke, I was lying at the edge of the clearing, the first light of dawn creeping through the trees. The altar was silent and cold, its runes inert, though their outlines seemed burned into my vision. My lantern lay nearby, shattered, and my walking stick was splintered as though I had fought something I could no longer recall. I stumbled back to Kingsport, a man forever altered. The people who saw me avoided my gaze, as if they sensed the taint of what I had encountered. I left the town the next day, and though I have tried to resume my life, the memory of that night haunts me still. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear that hum again, faint and distant, as though calling me back. I know that one day I will answer.
Alrighty, that was pretty good. We got our uh, wonderful journey that follows an old journal. That's always a familiar and happy to see cliche. And then at the end, we had the main character accepting their place in the cosmic horror. That's something that shows up every now and then. And yeah, this feels like a good old Lovecraft story. This is not anything too far one way or the other. We had somebody learning of the gigantic cosmos and being felt like a tiny little bug, and you know, this was pretty good. Yeah, I really like the journey. It was good. I don't know what else to say because this is mostly just a journey. But then once we get to the altar, that's when things start getting uh, creepy. And so I like the where is it? It was then that I heard its low, resonant hum, so deep and pervasive that it seemed to vibrate within my very bones. I like that. That's cool. Um, oh, I also like a strange mist began to coalesce, rising from the ground like tendrils of living smoke. That's cool. That's cool. It gives you quite the image in your mind. I don't know what else to say about that. Oh wait, and I also like this. And then it spoke, not in words, but in a torrent of raw thought that flooded my mind. That's cool. I don't have a lot to say this morning. I'm just really liking the way this worked out. I also like the line, "I tried to flee, but my limbs were leaden." I've never heard that expression before, but makes perfect sense. I actually thought that was leadened, but there's no D there, so it's just leaden. I've never heard that expression before, but that's interesting. Let's see. This one actually was fairly long compared to some of the other ones that end up being quite short. This one is a full 5 minutes, which really isn't that long, but for these Chat GPT stories, that's a decent size. Uh, yeah, I would have to look up if Kingsport is a real place. I have no idea. I don't remember it from Lovecraft stories, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't there. There are quite a few locations. Yeah. Sometimes in the dead of night, I hear that hum again, faint and distant, as though calling me back. I know one day I will answer. I like that. That's cool. That's very Lovecraft. You know, excuse me. Yeah. No. This was a really cool story. I can't think of any way that someone would improve upon it. It's there's no name to the entity that that shows up in this person's mind. It's just an ancient entity, I believe. I don't believe there's any name given to it. Yeah, yeah, no. I really hope you enjoyed this story, and this has been Joseph Arthur Roszell reading and reacting to The Gray Altar. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.